Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by PickTalk and Parametric Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and real perspectives in the world of film and television. Today, we're discussing Denis Villeneuve's new film/remake, Dune. It's the galactic world of Game of Thrones, except this time, things get even more spicy. That and more on today's episode of The Real Review, so stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
All right. Anyway, so what I was going to say before is that I think this is a very, we just hop right into it there. Yeah. I think this is like I enjoyed the experience. Ross, I think, and you probably enjoyed the experience, but it's a very divisive film in that you're either going to really enjoy the film and like it a lot. You're going to not understand the film and be like, what did I just watch and who's who? Or you're going to just hate it. And I think you're probably one of those three categories. I don't know. Maybe there's other people out there that have different opinions than that, but it seems like that would be the main three ways people would go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, so you saw it 3 times, right?
He's pointing at Dave right now.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, I'm David.
Okay. Yeah, well, we can do an intro if you want. Introduce each other because we don't really do that, like I said, very often. So on the mics, this is Joel, and then we also have Dave. Dave, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dave.
Hi, Dave. And then Ross.
The one and only Ross Caliguri.
One and only. Yeah. I don't know
Actually,
what that
there's
implies.
2 of us.
There is. Are you named after a family member? Or?
No, my mom named me after a doctor from General Hospital because when she was pregnant, she watched soap operas.
So there's 2 of you, but the other one's fictional. So they don't exist.
No, well, his last name's not Caliguri. I think his last name was Ross. I don't know. I've never seen General Hospital.
Oh, me neither.
I have seen Dune, though.
Yeah, I
do. Luke and Laura back in the 80s.
Oh, geez.
Guys.
Yeah, I saw the original Dune. That was the first, I didn't even know it at the time. It was the first David Lynch project I'd ever watched, which I call him David Lynch projects because he's an auteur, is what you would say. So
he is not for the masses.
I think he took his name off the original film.
Did he?
I think he just
one of the cuts. Yeah.
Oh, one of the cuts.
Oh, because of the studio interface. It was a very odd film. I mean, we don't have to spend too much time talking about that. But
wait, the Lynch or the
Lynch one?
Villeneuve.
The Lynchian one.
Okay.
It had almost a weird silliness to it, and I think that for some people it made a very cult type film because with like oddness and weirdness, it's always going to appeal to somebody. Like there's just too many different types of people out there for a weird film to not be enjoyed by some group of people. And it was this kind of like hodgepodge, a very small audience of like people that were into sci-fi and people were just into the weird Lynchian aspects of it. But I don't even know how that, I tried to look into a little bit about that original production of the first Dune film.
Well, you're in luck because I know a lot.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, we don't have to spend too much time talking about it, but I mean, there was obviously a lot of difficulty in just getting it made. Like there was so many different attempts, even with this current iteration to get this one made. It's been constantly shipped around and different write-ups. And I mean, originally the director for it had it was like 100-page write-up of what he wanted to turn it into, this like multi-film big thing, like the very, very first Dune. And that didn't end up getting made, right?
About Jodorowsky?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that guy was crazy. I mean, I've seen that documentary too.
Yeah.
He that whatever he wanted to make, it had great visuals and stuff, but that was not going to be
good
film.
Gotcha.
Well, it would have been interesting for sure if pulled off, but it would not have been a translation of the book.
Gotcha.
He admits in the documentary he never read the book.
How do you write a film about a book you haven't read?
You just open up to a random page and it's like wings on an airplane. Got it.
Yeah. He sends an assistant, summarize his book for me, and then he gets the write up and it's like, oh, worms in the sand.
Yeah, but having said that,
spice, like paprika. And
having said that, I love Alejandro Jodorowsky. He unbelievable. I don't know if you've seen like Holy Mountain.
No, I've not.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
you're in for a treat.
I can go back and start checking out some of his content. What's your familiarity, Ross, with the Dune
just the
trilogies
Dune,
or
just watching
films.
the Lynch film. And
Trilogy.
you were saying, people are into sci-fi or they're into like the weird Lynch stuff.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in that category that likes both.
Gotcha.
We both
So I like that
We
movie.
both like Lynch.
Mhm.
I'm a huge Dune fan, but
Mhm.
I think when Ross watches it, if you're a David Lynch fan,
Mhm.
you can appreciate what it is of David Lynch.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a faithful translation of the book,
Mhm.
at the same time being a David Lynch film, and
Yeah.
it's amazing.
And then you throw
It
Sting
is.
in there as an actor, and
Sting,
it's awesome.
The visuals were very strong, which I mean that's kind of a David Lynch thing. He has a very
Especially for the time.
See, I
visual
like
style.
that.
Yeah,
But I like the surreal stuff. I like the Space Navigator looking like that big.
The big brain.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That I looked into some of that aspect as well, and I don't know. I know Frank Herbert, who's the writer of the original Dune book. He liked the David Lynch version.
Yeah.
He was very much
I
a
think
fan of it. So
the biggest problem he had was he wanted it. It's impossible to film in one movie. He wanted to, or break it up or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that's when they started, over budgeting, or I don't know if it's over budgeting, but they just didn't agree on a cut, and
it turned into what it
It
was.
seems like Dune
Yeah.
has always had a issues
But
getting
it's-
off the ground.
It has, yeah.
But it's still good. Even in its theatrical version, there's an extended version that adds that little narration at the beginning, which is basically just a bunch of concept art, but just kind of giving you a backstory to help you understand it. I mean,
Yeah. I'm trying to think because, like, when I was finished watching
they're all
this
good. I
current
like
one,
all the cuts.
Well,
There are
it's
even
like-
fan cuts that are like,
if you watch this current one, would you want to go back and watch the David Lynch one if you haven't seen it? And it's definitely a different style film. It's definitely a different tone film.
but
And it has the narration.
it has
it's a
the
huge
narration, yeah.
difference.
It's easy. It's more accessible,
Mhm.
even though it's David Lynch. Which
but
you
a
wouldn't
lot
believe.
of the scenes really, I thought it honored the original film and all at the same time making it modern.
Yeah.
I feel like the original film kind of served as a storyboard concept for this new. I don't think it's a reboot. It's more of
Yeah.
a remake.
Kind of.
Right? Like
yeah.
there's a lot of very similar shots. The dialogue is presented the same way.
Yeah.
Well, that dialogue is
It's from the book, yeah.
So it's not really.
But you think about how much
Remaking,
dialogue is in that book, and they still chose that specific phrase, and the line was delivered that same way.
Yeah.
So again, like they obviously watched the Lynch film before making this one.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I think they did their homework.
Mhm.
It definitely feels like they knew where that original one from David Lynch came from, but also the book.
Mhm.
I should give the synopsis for it real quick here. So,
Yeah.
Dune, it's the future adaptation of Frank Herbert's science fiction novel about the son of a noble family entrusted with the protection of the most valuable asset and most vital element in the galaxy. Doesn't say what that is, but it's
The Spice
the
Melange.
Spice Melange. Yes. Director is Denis Villeneuve. I hopefully pronounced that correctly.
That's pretty.
Pretty
that
good.
was
Yeah.
really good,
Thank you. I actually looked it up just to make sure because, yeah. Anyway, it stars Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Stellan Skarsgård, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Josh Brolin. There's a large amount of people, so I'm not going to get into it. Of course, Zendaya is in it. Everybody, knows
You
her.
got to name Jason Momoa because
I did say Jason Momoa. Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah.
Carry on.
He was a good character. I thought he was a little odd at first, like his tonality compared to this is a very serious film, like especially compared to the David Lynch one, which the characters in the David Lynch one were like extremes, right? You had this like extremely emotional, bad guy, and then you had the very serious, Paul Atreides, and this one it was like everybody for the most part had these like they were either very serious or very like angry and sad, except for Jason Momoa who's like doing the back pats.
right.
He's like, hey buddy, hey, how you doing?
It's like the story is set in the year, what is it, like 10,100 and something, 91 or something like that. And then it's like, so everybody acts like they're this future civilization,
Right.
except Jason Momoa is like your everyday man from the
Still
21st
just
century.
Came off the beach a half hour
exactly.
earlier. He's like, hey guys, how you doing?
But I will say, I loved that they didn't Mega Man him. He wasn't like a hyper masculine dude.
Yeah.
And also, they didn't over sexualize him. They didn't find a reason to get his shirt off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
He didn't. it didn't look like he cast him to be an archetype of Jason Momoa. Like they didn't say, we want Jason Momoa to be a Jason Momoa, which is that big, surfer dude, shirt off, like, yeah, but like still his personality came through in the role, which I think that's a good director, right? You can bring somebody that's known for a different archetype and then put them in that role and they still fit within that character, and then use kind of the strengths of who they are as an actor or actress to really embrace that. Anyway, so we were talking about the original, Dune film with David Lynch, and my idea was, if I'm watching this new iteration, this new generation's Dune, if you will, and trying to figure out, is this something that if you enjoyed this film, you should go back and watch the original Dune? And I think so. Like, I think if you don't know anything about Dune for whatever reason, you watch this one, the Denis Villeneuve, and then you're like, well, I'd like to see more. Like, go back and watch it. It'll be a silly kind of romp through the world, and you're going to get a lot more of the story. Like, you're going to get the second half of the story
and history.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting for you. I don't know, what do you guys?
I watch the film like literally every month. It's one of my go-to films that I'll just put on.
Yeah.
So there's so many things about the original film, the David Lynch version, that like are so iconic. They're like so what other people view like as almost like a camp or over performance or whatever. Now I get Vladimir Harkonnen, like that's an over the top performance, but
yeah, I
relish in it. Like Kevin Smith even referenced that spit scene. I just want to spit on your face just once, and it's just like that big. I mean, it is a big piece of spit.
Yeah,
just hits her face, and it's like, oh,
yeah.
I mean, but like that's an insane scene.
Yeah.
But more for me, more the father-son relationship stuff really hits hard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they did.
I can never remember the guy
that
plays Duke Leto in the other one, about just talking how proud he is. I don't have children, but
we are children, right?
Yeah, but I would hope
mom and dad. Somewhere.
Yeah, it's twofold. I'd want to have a child that I'm that proud of.
Yeah,
and I want to be a father that my son would want me to be proud of him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a scene there. It's on the balcony, slightly raining.
Mm-hmm.
That speech, which is about, the sleeper must awaken.
Yeah. I think if anyone's more guilty in this one of doing some slightly bad stuff in the film, it would be his mom. But I think she's coming from a world, like, we're not going to get into it too much, obviously, but she's coming from a very different world and was kind of forced down this path. And they don't even talk about this in the film, but the whole fact that she had a boy was a big thing. Like,
right.
They don't.
She was only supposed to have women.
She's only supposed to have women, which they don't really talk. Well, they talk about that. Like, she didn't really prepare Paul. She didn't really talk to him about what was going on, and he gets mad at her for that. But they don't really, I don't think, talk about the whole reasoning for what she did, and the whole build up towards why she had Paul instead of having a girl or anything like that. Which is a part of it.
Yeah, I think the Jessica Duke Leto relationship is just explored a little bit more in the Lynch film.
Yeah.
Which I love those scenes. I love those scenes.
Yeah, I think all I'm saying in that is that I kind of wish this film did not do a lot of handholding. Like, you get the bare bones of where things are at right now, and then it's like right into the story.
Yeah, you got to pay attention. You can't, like I said, you can't get up.
And I was kind of like, so a lot. I've heard one of the big comparisons that I've heard. Go ahead.
Have you seen the Lynch film?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it was a long time ago?
It was a long time ago, yeah.
Okay.
One of the big comparisons I've heard
you're a good test audience for it. Like,
right.
Because I know it back and forth, and I read the book. So, yeah, it's hard for me to gauge if your average viewer would appreciate it. So I'm interested in your thoughts.
Yeah. I saw the first one when I wasn't as big a fan, I think, of like... I had a hard time with the style. And the style was so strong, the original, that it kind of turned me off. And it wasn't the right kind of campy for me. Like, I can get into a campy film, but it just felt so unnecessarily silly, I guess, at times. And I can look back at it now and kind of appreciate it for what it was. And I think some of that might not be Lynch. Some of that might be the studio involvement and the way that they wanted the film cut to try and turn it into something. Because Lynch is known for making these films that have scenes and shows that it's like, what does that even mean? Like, and it has maybe a deeper meaning, but you're not necessarily going to get it on first watching. And
I mean, the effects are very, dated for
That's what I was going to say.
2021.
yeah, and the effects are very dated. Yeah.
And
But-
there's montages in it, which you don't see very much anymore.
But even-
it's aged. at
Yeah.
this point.
But even in his spice visions, I mean, it's just so David Lynch. It's like,
Yeah.
that's what I like appreciate it for. But again, if you hate David Lynch, you're not going to appreciate it.
I don't hate David Lynch, I would say, as a director. I just don't know if I've seen enough things of his that I like. To be honest, I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, it's David Lynch, I'm going to dislike it. There's directors that are out there that are like that for me, but for him, it's kind of just like, you're still too much of an unknown. Like, I tried to get into Crimson Peak and didn't.
But they wanted him to do a Return of the Jedi back in the day.
That would have been interesting. I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
it would have been
Yeah.
horrible.
An interesting experience. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he would have.
You would have like
he would have
Palpatine
been-
having these weird flashbacks of
He
Force
would have been
and-
fired off of that.
Yeah, probably.
In a white unicorn
Yeah,
running across the full moon.
Just randomly, yes.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like,
geez.
George, I think it sounds like you should direct it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That's a pretty good Lynch impression.
That's not bad. Yeah. So going
I'm telling you, I
into going into this film, I had the base familiarity with the story elements, which was very helpful because one of the big things that I had heard from not just the group I was with, but like the group that you were watching it with, Ross, is they don't necessarily understand it. And I think and that was something I was going to say to people, like, in my opinion, if you can, just like before you see the film, go to like a Wikipedia article. If you don't know anything about Dune, just do the base level research of this film. Figure out like the House Atreides, figure out like the Emperor, figure out like what the creation of the universe, of this universe that we see it, with the big war that happened.
No,
What the spice is used for.
What the spice is used for. Yeah.
For the original film, first theatrical release, they had programs,
Right.
which I think would have
that's
helped
smart.
this
Yeah.
film.
That would be
Absolutely.
kind of cool to actually bring that back.
That would have been pretty cool. But
Yeah.
like that would have really helped because it would have primed, I think, most of the people out there that aren't really into Dune or really into sci-fi with being able to just enjoy the story for what it was. But if you're not into Dune, you're not a big sci-fi fan, you don't know anything about it, and you just start watching this movie, it's a lot to take in because it's, even as somebody that's knowledgeable of the world, it's a heavy film. Like the themes, the cinematography mixed with the music and the emotions in the scenes are very heavy, and they hit you hard. And if you mix with that, I don't even know what's happening, that's going to turn people off. So that's not all to say it's a bad film.
That being said, I thought this was better at making it clearer what was going on. But everybody else I've talked to,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
I think on
Yeah.
the planet, I don't want to give spoilers, so I'm trying to avoid it. But like, they do a better job of what's happening on the Spice Planet, which is Arceus. What was it
Yeah.
called?
Arrakis.
Arrakis, yeah.
Or
I agree.
Dune. Just say Dune.
They give you a better understanding of what's happening on the planet for
Mhm.
sure, but they don't give you a better understanding of what's happening in the universe.
Right.
Like when
Agreed.
when the Emperor's group shows up and they make that proclamation, you're like, what is are these like visitors? What are they
Right.
what are they doing? And like at that point I was like, oh yeah, you really kind of need to know like who the Emperor is a bit better and why
And-
he's
and
accepting the
They
proclamation.
name
and-
him several times, but they don't show him.
Right. And if they had given you like even a 5-minute, like, here's the Emperor, here's how he came to power, here's why there's different houses and
Princess
how they make
Irulan,
their money
yeah.
and the internet, they talk briefly about the space travel being controlled by basically the spice runners and how the spice is on the planet and it's going to make a lot of money. And then here's a couple houses. But again, I think,
But they only talk about 2 or 3 houses. They don't
Yeah.
talk about the 7 or however
But
many.
see,
there
if you had
Yeah,
Lynch's
exactly.
version is, he who controls the spice controls the universe. You
yeah,
know, like,
exactly.
okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's
And
very
just-
simple.
and
Yeah.
just other stuff like the women, or at least the mother, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that she can kind of hear other people's thoughts or
Yeah.
control people,
Yeah.
right? And so they'll show a scene where she's staring at another woman,
Mhm.
but they're not explaining what's happening between the two of them. And
Right.
what they're doing is they're trying to decide if one's lying or one's not.
Yeah.
Right. Or how honest of their
Yeah.
intentions are.
Yeah,
But they don't explain that.
They
at
don't
all.
explain it. They very briefly talk about how the manipulation of the birthing of kids into like having this ability to understand things differently and to use the voice. Like they very briefly tiptoe into that. And so that's a bit, it felt
like
a bit abrupt.
1,000-year chess moves. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, if you think about what they've done and how they've done it, I mean, they don't even talk about why technology is where it's at in the world, which was
Yeah,
a big part of the formation of the empire.
Butlerian,
Right, because it's like, well, why are you limited in space travel? If you've got this like literally flying bug thing that can, and you've got like shields that you literally can put around your body, it's like, why don't you have a supercomputer that allows you to do space travel? Like, why is it required? Like, they don't talk about that kind of stuff. But if you understand, oh, well, the emperor said, yeah, no computers that have sentient thought or above a certain level of intelligence, that makes sense.
Right.
You know, and if I say that, somebody, oh, okay. But if you're just watching the film, it's a little confusing. I think
it brings up what I said right when the movie ended. It just needs 15 minutes at the beginning.
Yeah, just a primer. Like that's really all I was thinking it would need, because I think there was people out there, you know, like the people that you saw it with, like the people that I saw it with, that kind of wanted to enjoy it. They wanted to like it. They recognized the cinematography for what it was, and the actors for what they were, and the interesting story natures for what it was. But they couldn't because they were so confused on what exactly
Especially because we've learned so much. I mean, it's 2021 by now. Like, Star Wars has been around forever, and they all have the scrolling text.
Right.
Like, you could even do that for
well, we're used
3
to
minutes.
Yeah, this is not to fault Denis Villeneuve, but I mean, we're also used to Marvel films.
Yeah,
where it's like, you know, in the first 15 minutes, we get a very quick, this is the bad guy. And I hate Tony Stark because Tony Stark did this to my family, and so I'm going to destroy him. And that's like, that's your basic premise of the plot, right?
And every movie now has to be, like you're saying, introduce the villain and then quick cut to action to get people in, and then you can slow it down and start showing everything.
And which is not at all to attack.
And this just ramped to me.
It did. It ramped. Yeah. It's not to attack people and say that people are stupid, but it's like, that's what we're used to, right? So it's like, if you're going to do something that goes against the grain, that's fine. But again, you need to prime people and help them like kind of hold their hand into that type of experience. And I don't feel like this film did that. And I think for that reason, it's going to be good and accessible for Dune fans and people that are really into like high sci-fi. They're going to want to research it and find out more. And but other types of people are going to be like, it was a bit too inaccessible.
And they won't go see the second one.
Knowing it a lot, I heard all those beats that explained everything. But again, if you're new, it might, maybe go see it again.
And Dave's right. Like, all the information is in the dialogue.
Yeah.
But you have to listen to every word and comprehend every word.
But again, that's how I enjoy films. It's in that theater. It's with nobody around me. I love it. But to me, it's Blade Runner 2049 all over again. It's a freaking masterpiece to me, but I
didn't like Blade Runner at all.
Oh,
2049. I liked the original, but this one I liked. So
I would just say our last review, we were talking about James Bond, and we all liked that they didn't spoon feed you, right? Yeah. And I think that there's different levels of spoon feeding, and Dune doesn't, like you said, doesn't hold your hand at all. No, it thinks you're an intelligent person.
Yeah. It holds your brain, and you can like kicks your brain into the
exactly.
I hope in 30 years this will be studied.
I think it will.
A classic film.
Yeah, it was made really well. I'm not crapping on it at all. I loved it. Yeah.
There was only one moment in the entire time I saw it that I think I got taken out of the film, and that was because of a kind of a poor CGI moment, which was when one of the, I forget what they call it, but one of the flying machines that picks up the spice machine.
The harvester.
It looked like the balloons on top of it looked really fake. And I was like, well, that's weird. I felt like they could have done that a little better. But other than that, the only time I ever came out of the movie was like people standing and moving around, because it's a long movie,
right?
And people moved around.
But I thought everything looked real.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
And they let the scene hang, which a lot of films don't do anymore, but it gives you time to think. So if you're stuck there saying, well, what's going on? They're giving you that extra 30 seconds at the end of a scene to kind of think it over, remember what was said.
I just love its sense of scale, from like the big, Space and Guild ship that the little dot would come out of.
Yeah.
And then it, the next scene as it comes through the clouds, lands on that platform is immense, which gives scale to the thing you just saw 2 seconds ago. In its background was a dot,
Yeah.
It did that a lot. Like the ornithopters it was like this wide shot, and then they would fly into the scenes and they were like dots, or they would like fly over a cliff, and then over on the side you see a couple Fremen guys just walking.
Yeah.
And it was, to me, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're called jump cuts or smash cuts, but there was just a lot of really cool editing, I thought, going on.
It would depend, yeah. Smash cut and jump cuts, kind of similar. Jump cut, usually you jump to an alternative, like...
non-linear
jump.
Yeah,
like a non-linear jump. Right. Smash cut's usually like the same scene, but it just like boom, like jumps into it sort of.
But like when they're inside on
Or
Dune,
maybe that's the opposite.
and the whole interior shot's pretty dark. But then somebody's going to go outside and it just cut to that blinding brightness. And that really gives you a sense of like, it's hot, it's sunny, it's a desert.
Yeah.
Instead of like a lot of people would have you walk through the door with the character and slowly bring up the brightness.
Yeah. One thing that you cannot, I think, attack the director on this, and all the projects I've ever seen of his, is tone. He knows how to, through the composition of shots, through music, through the faces of the actors and everything, and the special effects, he knows how to set a tone and stick with that.
And it carries.
And it carries. And it's like this whole film, you kind of had a sense of dread. I mean, at least I did. And just kind of this slow moving disaster that you just felt, even in the way he did certain close-ups to certain angles and just kind of like certain shots hung on like a black, like open area, and just kind of the way that the motion kind of happened. Just the whole time you felt like, okay, something dreadful is building here. Something bad is kind of building here. And I thought that was very effectively done and was a really nice thing.
And it meshes well with the score.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that I heard referred to this film as, and I liked the metaphor, but I felt like it was somewhat fitting and not, was it's like Game of Thrones in space. It's like that, but I felt like the thing that Game of Thrones did better to make it more accessible to like anybody, and maybe it's just because they had a bunch of episodes to do it, but they talked about over time the history of House Lannister and the Starks,
more than just it's been 10,000 years,
right? And they started a very simple thing. It's like, here's a friendship between these two houses, and there's conflict there, and then oh my gosh, this kid, and so so it's like you kind of slowly build into the world, whereas this one is like bloop, you're in the world, go, and it's like the beginning of a huge shift that's happening in the world without a lot of hand holding. So I think it's a good way of looking at it. But like I said, I think if you're somebody that hasn't experienced this yet or wants to go watch it in something you don't know anything about it, get yourself a little bit of a primer. Just go read I know it sounds stupid, but just to go read the Wikipedia article about, Dune, and there's like parts of it where it talks about the history of the world. It's like, just read a little bit of that. And then when you go into this, you can really experience it for what it is, which is a really interesting delve into the dynamics of like power struggles and the role of parents in a child's life, and even technology and religion. There's the semblance of like, what's the role of religion, and is that what does that mean to people, and even the idea, I think, of like heroes. Who is a hero and why is a hero? And Frank Herbert talks all about that in his writing
the
about
book is the book is so on point, way ahead of its time.
I almost have to give him credit, because it almost treats you as the audience as the idiot for not knowing about Dune.
Yeah.
So like, how many people just walk up to a movie theater, or maybe used to walk up to a movie theater? Which one do you want to see? Well, that poster looks good. What's it about? I don't know. Let's just go see it.
Yeah.
Like Dune is like, you need to know about this before you see it. I mean, that's kind of the feeling I got.
I don't know if it's better to have read the book or just seen this cold. Like, if I was the same exact person I am and my same taste, would I like it just seeing it and then that's how I was introduced to the story, or having known the book?
It's hard to say. Yeah.
Very hard to say.
Yeah. I read the book like over 10 years ago. I saw the David Lynch one like over 10 years ago. So it's like, I feel like I kind of almost fall into that category of being unfamiliar with it. I was familiar enough with it that I knew, like, again, like House of Atreides and spice and, sandworms, and like, I know what all those things are. But I also kind of, I like high sci-fi, like high end, like, they talk about high fantasy and low fantasy. This is like high sci-fi. Like I like that type of heady, slow paced, slow burn. Like, this is a very slow burn type movie.
Yeah. You'll see stuff. This is the new Star Wars. I wouldn't say Star Wars.
No,
it's not action.
Yeah, Star Wars is
Dune
like
has
space
never been
opera.
Star Wars.
So what was that?
Dune has never been Star Wars.
No.
So to expect it, when people say that kind of stuff, it's like, but it never aimed to be that.
Right.
It's
and
good.
Well, I mean, it came out before.
I wish this was the kind of films that would get. I mean, it's doing well in the box office. I don't think it's going to be like multi-billion-dollar film or anything by any stretch.
No,
but
HBO made sure of that. So.
Yeah. But I mean, it's doing well enough. I mean,
my fear is that kids today who maybe didn't even realize Dune was a thing before now, didn't latch onto it. And so if they make a second one, they won't go see it, or in 20 years, they'll stop talking about Dune.
Yeah.
And even if it's not the best movie, I've really liked it. I want people to continue talking about it, because maybe in another 20 years we get another one.
Yeah.
Or
well,
whatever.
this is part 1, right? So, which I didn't know that.
Me
and
neither.
I feel stupid. Yeah.
Until it came on the screen.
I feel stupid. Like
No,
I
that
try.
was one of his stipulations on.
Yeah, I try
on the
not to
job.
like.
It's like, we are not making this one film.
Yeah, I very much like when I first know about a film that I'm interested in coming out, I'll do very little. I'll probably watch the first trailer, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I like to go in cold. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to go in completely cold, and sure enough, I sit down. It's part 1. What? I was like, oh my goodness, this is only going to be part 1. And then you start getting in there. I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing. Like, I see how you're setting this up. You're saving some of the more spicy type scenes, I guess I should say, for the next film, without spoiling it.
Well, and I hope they take note. And if they haven't filmed the second one, right?
No.
They need to have a moment.
They don't even have a contract for that yet.
I don't want to
That's
give a
the weird
spoiler,
thing.
but they need to have a moment where some of the characters sit down and explain the history of the world to somebody else.
Well, I think in the second one, it's going to open up the cast because half of the cast just got killed.
Right.
Ooh, spoiler, sorry.
Oh, dang.
But I'm saying I think it's going to expand in the second cast. Because to me, this is like an act 1.
It is.
This wasn't even a...
It's setting this. It's like positioning the chess pieces in a certain sense. I mean, they're not fully in place yet. Obviously, I mean, there's still some transition happening, but certain pieces are definitely in place, and we're seeing how other ones sort of shape out. It's like the black pieces or the white pieces are in place, and we're waiting for the other side of the board to kind of get there.
I will say, this was either the quickest I've been into a movie, I think, of all time.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I want to see. I'm kind of curious of your experience. The very opening line of dialogue, I was like, oh, I'm into this.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I got a little bit out when I saw part
before
1.
the Warner Brothers logo.
Yeah, like the very.
Oh, you do it better. Yeah.
Oh, that's all right.
I think we need to do it at the same time.
Yeah, there we go. That would create that.
You do yours. Yeah, that's gonna work.
And he just says, "Dreams are messages from the deep," and that's
anyway.
Yeah. Well, I just tried to keep it moving too.
Yeah.
But I was in right away, and then it said part 1, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
It was funny that when that moment happened in the film, I was like, "I think Ross would like that." I mean, you write a book that's about dreams, and so I was like, "Oh yeah."
But the sound, and like I knew immediately the sound design was going to be good because like that didgeridoo that you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty accurate to how it actually sounds, but it's in surround sound. And it's,
Which I think worked itself as well into, and we didn't talk a lot about this, but the music, you know, the music is a very much like a tribal, almost kind of, I don't know, which I don't want to sound insulting, but it's like a tribal Aborigine kind of
I really felt
feel
like
to it at times.
It really worked with that Islamic
there's bagpipes
visuals,
in it,
just everything.
too.
Yeah, bagpipes. Yeah.
But it's cool because every house
great,
and every like group of people kind of had their own theme, and then when they came together, those themes meshed.
Yeah,
and it was really awesome.
Which is good filmmaking. I mean, you want. I think that's good sci-fi. I should say it's like you want the sci-fi to feel relatable to our world, which is like you could see a Scottish tribe, a Scottish house rising up, and then even like 10,000 years in the future, they're gonna have bagpipes, like because it's just the traditional like that's.
But I think about like Star Wars iconic themes anyway, but it's like Darth Vader has a theme, Skywalker, Good Force has a theme, but when they come together, they don't mesh them.
Yeah,
this did a really good job of meshing those musical themes together.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah,
but I didn't. I loved it, but I didn't feel like it had those,
hits or beats. But
yeah, just like more distinctive themes on stuff. But I
agree. Yeah,
yeah, it's more of a vibe.
I don't think
more of a vibe.
Yeah, there weren't more points that really warranted it. I thought maybe toward the end, but as I watched it again, I was like, no, I like that.
Yeah.
Like whenever it showed the ships of the what are they called? Like the Harkonnen. Yeah. Like the electric guitars coming in, and it's not really a melody, but it's dry. It's like a driving vibe.
It is, yeah.
And that drum cadence.
Yeah. The whole soundtrack felt like, and this is kind of a Zimmer thing, I guess. Like if you look at, I think you did Tron, right? Didn't Hans Zimmer do Tron with Daft Punk? I don't know. Anyway, the whole soundtrack, I thought, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong,
but it was Daft Punk on it. I don't know if they worked with anybody, but
the whole soundtrack to me felt like it never felt like it ended. It felt like it started at the very beginning of the movie, and then it just kind of continued and slightly changed and morphed into different parts, into different things.
And flows in and out of the actual sound design.
Which was an interesting choice to me, because I think, to your point, I'm kind of more used to like thematic. right?
Mhm.
So like you'll see Paul and he's like, the hero in a sense, and it'll play like the hero's theme, right? Or then you'll see House Harkonnen and then it's like the like you'll have like the hard metal sounds with that would be their theme, and every time they're a big function you're going to have those familiar sounds. It didn't really feel like that. I kind of want to go back and study the music a little more and see if it did more of those thematic things.
House Atreides, I think, is when you first hear the bagpipes, but then when Atreides and Harkonnen meet, you hear both together.
Okay.
And that's what I thought was just awesome. I mean,
that's
like
too well.
Attention to detail. I guess, to me,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a usage of different instrumentality to tie together different elements in the film. So it's great.
Just a very, very unique score.
It was very
Loved
unique.
it.
Yeah. And I think part of it
Very
as well
ambient.
is very ambient. I was like, would this be something like if I was going to try and score a film, like what direction? I don't know. I don't want to go down that path because I feel like if I start talking about what I would do, then I'm in the wrong place.
I do think, just trying to think of more non-spoilers.
Yeah.
You don't have the narration in this one. We've talked about that. The Lynch one does. This is not. So you really are kind of forced to learn about the world through the main, I guess Paul's the main character, right? Through his experience and his life. So you don't go in knowing anything about the world and you only learn it as he does.
Yeah.
So it still works, I think.
I agree. Yeah. Well, let's, we've been talking for a while now. I think people that haven't seen it, hopefully you have enough info with minor spoilers. I apologize for that. But let's give our overall rating for it, and then we can move into kind of more spoiler talk. Does that sound good? So
yeah, go ahead.
You want me to go? You've seen it the most times. I think you should go first. How many times have you seen it now?
I think it's 4. But what is the rating? What are we doing?
0 to 100.
0 to 100, yeah. It's like an 8.
We haven't had a 0 yet.
F
Will this
rating.
be the first 0?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
1.
Well, it actually is the first 0, but it has another 0 in it, and the 1 is right in front of
For real?
both those
There you
zeros.
go. Wow.
Yeah, for sure,
Nice.
100%.
Nice.
Wow.
This is, I walked out of this movie feeling the way I did when I walked out of Blade Runner 2049, was just like a complete cinematic experience. It was awesome.
That's
on
awesome.
all counts.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Makes me happy for you.
I was,
Yeah. If you can
Yeah.
have that kind of experience in cinema, that's beautiful.
like I said, I was impressed with the retelling of the story, the honoring the source material and honoring David Lynch's film all at the same time, all while incorporating newer, trendier actors that just didn't suck. Yeah,
and that's
they were
how you
all
do fan
great.
service,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it had all kinds of fan service.
Yeah.
Like you said, it honored Lynch's film. It didn't just be like, oh, we're going to pretend that never happened. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ross. What's your rating then?
I feel like I always have to give contingencies with my ratings, but I'm going to do it on this one too.
Yeah.
So for me personally, liking Dune, right? Liking sci-fi, I'm going to give it a 94. I think Dave is absolutely right. This will be looked back upon and used in study of filmmaking and all kinds of stuff like that. And it hit all the right notes for me, but I also know the story.
Yeah.
For somebody who doesn't know the story, I'm going to take 10 off. I'm going to give it an 84. I still think it's worth seeing.
Yeah.
And I think if you are confused, open up an article, read about it, get excited for the second one.
I think that's fair. That's close to where I'm at. I feel like I'm always between you guys, which is funny, but I'm giving an 89.
Yeah, right in the middle.
It was on the cusp. I feel like there's enough there for me that if you just enjoy films and cinema, even if you're not familiar with Dune and you just watch it, you should be able to. If you really pay attention, really hard, then I think you'll get enough of the story to make it still a good viewing experience. Again, even if you've never seen Dune stuff. And I think the combination of factors with the cinematography, the world building, the inventiveness of just, how they put everything together, made it really good. There was some pain points for me and some difficulties, and we'll get into that kind of more in the spoiler track. But yeah,
I would say too,
go ahead.
Every line of dialogue that is spoken in that movie has a purpose, except for some of the Jason Momoa stuff. But I excuse it because I like him, and it was nice that they just let him be Jason Momoa still.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just didn't feel like there was any fluff.
But having seen it, thinking like, there are some problems, would you see it again now that you know it's on HBO Max?
I would see it again, but not for, and this is one of the reasons it's probably lower, not because I was like so entertained by it. I would watch it again because I wouldn't study it. Like you said, want to figure out, and like I talked about, does the theme play through with these characters? Is it just an instrumentality thing at different times, or does like each distinct character have their own thematic thing going on, or how do they edit this shot.
Do you understand that little mouse?
Right. And there was enough like I was catching up on with this story that I was somewhat familiar with, that I was trying to like pay attention more to like, okay, do I understand who's that person and why they're doing that? So watching it again would help me to just look at it for what it is. But again, I wouldn't watch it again because I was like so entertained by it.
I will say I watched it with people who had never seen or heard anything about Dune.
Yeah.
And no offense to them because they're great people. I wish I had watched it either alone or with people who knew a lot about Dune, because I kind of was distracted some of the time thinking, are they picking up on this? Did they even hear that last line?
Yeah.
Do they know that that's important?
Yeah.
And when you're watching something, you don't want to be distracted by obscure
Absolutely.
thoughts like that. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. So with that, we will get into some of the spoiler talks. If you don't want any of that, go ahead and turn the podcast off now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
so much death.
So much death. I mean, Isaac, Momoa. I mean, just sad stuff. Brolin. We didn't really get a distinct Brolin death scene, did we?
Right.
As I was thinking about that as we were talking about.
But if you know about the story.
Yeah. I was like, hint, right? Yeah.
Can we spoiler the second one even though it's not out yet?
No,
How does that work?
Well, you don't know how they're going to interpret it. But.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I thought overall, so if we're going to get kind of more of the spoiler talk, I think that involves more the characters and their story arcs and everything like that. You all right? Oh, you're cold. Oh,
Yeah.
We can turn the air conditioner. We turned it down on purpose because we were trying to like, I don't know, predict that
Cool
it would
it
get
down.
hotter in here, and we turned some of the fans off. So, yeah, but I like it. I'm usually a hot. I run warm, so if other people don't, I get.
And
that
I
though.
usually wear a sweater.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was very nice about this was that each character although there was a large cast of characters, everybody in the story had a reason for being there, and it felt like they served their purpose in the time that they needed to serve their purpose, except for, and I'm just going to be honest and say this was a negative, Zendaya. I don't have anything against her. I think she was fine in the role. I feel like there was about 4 too many to 5 too many to 6 too many flashback scenes.
To her. To not have her even really be in the movie.
Exactly. I mean, I can only deal with so many like, oh, she stabs him. Oh, she's got a bloody hand. Oh, she kisses him but doesn't. Or like, I got the idea that she's this potential romantic interest that could be deadly or could be whatever. I only need to see that like 2 or 3 times.
So when I said there need to be 10 to 15 at the front of the movie, I also think they could have just added 10 more at the end with the Freeman.
Yeah.
Right.
I would have been fine with that.
Just to like get you excited about that next one a little more.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
And they could have had scenes with her then that I think, I don't know, it's weird to just like flash the face of a girl and you're like, okay, well, I guess she's going to be in the second one, but why not have her do something?
Yeah, it was weird that.
Well, it didn't really, give the Fremen's point of view at all.
I know. And that was one of the things that I felt like I would have enjoyed a little more. Well, it was
but again, like if you're just watching half a film.
Yeah.
So I think it
and
needs
to
be
wait
judged
2
as
years.
a whole, but yeah.
Well,
but then again, Coat.
Yeah, so it was like they
word,
were comfortable jumping to like the Harkonnens' perspective, right? They showed conversations that were happening between the Harkonnens and basically saying like, oh well, this is that, but they weren't comfortable jumping to like Zendaya's perspective. And I was like, why not give her a little bit of action? Maybe you're trying to build up this
Javier Bardem.
Yeah, or Javier Bardem, right?
Well,
I get that you're trying to build up that thing, but it's like that would have helped me to flesh out the world a little more.
Yeah, but I think it was purposely made mysterious and unknown, like what they knew about the numbers. Like when Duncan came back, he's like, the numbers.
They were off. Yeah, like they thought there was 10,000.
Yeah,
a million. Yeah,
yeah. I get some of that. But I would have been fine with seeing a little bit of Jason Momoa get into that fight. Like, don't just tell me, oh, I was wandering around.
I'm sure
and
it's
then...
on the cutting room floor.
I would have been fine with it instead of the 10 flashbacks that I got.
They used the Duncan scenes with the Fremen as a vision.
Yeah.
So
that
something was
bugged
shot.
me a little bit where that's the first time you're seeing on the planet, you're seeing Mimosa Duncan.
Yeah.
And he says, it was the toughest fight I ever been in, well trained or whatever.
Show me.
And then they show the first fight with Duncan, and it's not that big of a fight scene. So I don't know if the director just couldn't really do the action that I was expecting.
The action in this was not very impact, like especially the hand-to-hand combat.
Right.
It all felt very like simple.
It didn't feel like Duncan had been training his whole life to be a soldier in Zod's army. You know what I mean? It just felt like he was really tough and strong and quick.
Yeah. It was all the fights were very quick. Like, boom, 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 dead. Boom, 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 dead. Mm-hmm. And I guess that kind of makes sense, right? Like if you're trying to be the most effective fighter, I just think that line, you want to be able to kill people quick.
The line doesn't land when he's like, "It was the toughest fight I've ever been in." It's like you're saying, "Show us then."
Right.
Right.
I'm like, cut back on the amount of. I was fine with the idea that like, hey, we're going to show you this expansive desert and we're going to show you these palm trees so that later when they're burning, it's a symbolic thing. And like, I get that you're setting all that stuff up, but it's like, I would have enjoyed more of the show me that fight, show me what the Fremen are up to, show me what like other things are happening that isn't just to set up a tonality.
It's like in the movie,
but it's actually to tell you more of the story in the world.
It's in the movie Troy, where it's like, bring out your champion, right? And they don't just go, well, Brad Pitt, he's the best fighter ever.
Yeah.
And not show you. They show you like him overcoming a 6'8" giant.
It could have used a little more of the Troy factor.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how you do it. To me, it's like
defeats him in one blow.
Yeah. But you could tell me all day you're the best fighter in the world.
Yeah. But you got to show me that.
You got to show me that. Yeah.
Well,
so
that he's here.
Yeah.
But I did love that entrance of Stilgar where he's like, stop. Just keeps on walking.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was good.
And he spits. And then Mimosa really carries it a little further. Yeah. Because he's like trying to be all proper. We accept your blessing.
Yeah. And they all like spit uncomfortably. Like, like you can tell they're not used to it. Yeah. I thought that was good. One of the things that was weird to me, well, I won't say weird to me, was I just think, again, Denis Villeneuve did a great job setting the tone of the film throughout. And it felt like, again, there was this slow moving train wreck, this slow moving disaster that was kind of like coming. And so when it happens, you're like, oh, okay, there it is. I could have used a bit more, I guess, abruptness in that regard, in like the surprise and the shock of it. And then in the other sense, spend like when a Game of Thrones shock moment happens, as much as I like, Game of Thrones did bad things too, but so I don't want to keep talking about how they're great or something. I'd be fine with more of an abrupt shock instead of this slow burn build towards, if it allows me to get more into the world, right? Like if it allows me more time to get into the characters in the world and showing other people's perspectives, because obviously you're comfortable doing that. Like give me a little bit of the backstory of the I forget his name, the assistant that ends up betraying them.
The doctor?
Kynes.
Yeah. Like give me a little bit more time with him.
Yui.
Right. To show that betrayal
Wellington
even more effectively. And so I don't know.
I do feel like a lot of the slow burn does pay off though. And one example I was going to bring up is when Paul is talking to his dad and he's like, what if I'm not ready to be the Duke or the leader or whatever?
Yeah,
and then I wrote the line down, but the dad says, a great man doesn't seek to lead. He's called to it. But if your answer is no, you'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be, my son.
Yeah.
And he delivers it so well. That slow burn to get to that moment was done so well that I feel like that's a real payoff.
I agree. Yeah. Sorry.
This is beautiful.
I thought
I said, I love those moments between the characters. Like
the best thing about, I think, a lot of the characters in the film is the relationship dynamics between them. It all felt very real. It all felt very honest. It felt like those would be the kinds of relationships you had that weren't just being artificially, like the mom having had Paul outside of the blessing of the church group or whatever they're called. Obviously, she's not going to share all those details with him, not just because it's going to protect him, but also because she's ashamed probably of the fact that she went and did that. And so there's this struggle of like, I'm trying to protect you, but I'm probably also ashamed of what I did. And so I thought that family dynamic was good. And then I loved the dynamic of the father-son relationship. Right. And you're like, it almost is like this kid is a really good, like usually you'd see this kid and he'd be spoiled and, the parents would be like self-centered but it's like, no, these are good people. Mm-hmm. Like for the most part, they're trying to do their best for the Fremen. They're like saving people's lives.
They're the middle class people that just got a lucky break.
Yeah.
They're going to go make riches and
yeah.
And there's another good slow burn where Paul says something like, grandfather chased down bulls.
Yeah.
And the dad just says, and look where that got him. And it's like referencing that he died, and he's a farmer or whatever.
Bullfight, yeah.
But then throughout the movie, you notice that in his office, he's got the bullhead.
Yeah.
And then when they move to Dune, the bullhead comes, they unpack it.
Yep.
And then there's like a little trophy or whatever you want to call it, trophy, but a statue of a bull fight and all this stuff. And you start to realize that even though the dad said that line, like, look where that got him, he still respected his father and his legacy.
There's a heavy amount of respect.
But they don't ever tell you that. It's just on the camera. It's in the camera.
Yeah, a lot of it's just shots. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
incredible.
So I think if you-
even
if-
on his, well, yeah, we're in spoilers.
Yeah.
Even at his death, he's at the angle he's paralyzed at. He's looking at it.
possibly. Yeah.
No,
Is he?
it cuts to it.
Oh, it cuts to it? Oh, I didn't
above.
see
They're
that.
in that room
Because
where-
everybody
I
everybody
didn't
has their
notice
own
that.
bull to chase, right? Like
I didn't
I don't
notice
know.
that. Yeah,
it's
just-
just
that's actually cool.
we're talking about, like, it doesn't spoon feed you or hold your hand, but it's
No.
all in there.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just love this the speech about it's in that same scene about we came to power, from sea power and air power.
Yeah.
It's like the way to win Iraq is desert power,
Yeah.
which is understanding the land, understanding its people,
Yeah.
and utilizing them instead of butchering them.
Mhm.
Like they're
Enforcing it. Yeah.
they're ways that there's a reason why, the Atreides are becoming so popular
Mhm.
because he, understands people in his fair, just like
he's
a good
it's a good
ruler.
house. He's a good ruler. He's not
Yeah.
trying to just put them under the thumb. Like he's
Yeah.
trying to be fair and just.
exactly.
I like how they
Yeah.
stay consistent too. So, like, we're talking about the metaphors and the bowls and stuff, but like the hollow shields, I don't know what the technical name is for them, that the defensive
Yeah.
shields,
The body
they
shield
don't
thing.
ever tell you what that does.
Yeah.
They show him hit a button, slap the knife on the hand, it changes to a different color.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, a lot of people are wearing them
Yeah.
later in the film. But like, again, nobody sat down and goes, oh, this was made 10 years ago. This should keep you safe from a 50-pound hammer.
Yeah.
That's just,
What was interesting to me in the shield thing, and I don't know if this was like a choice that they made on purpose, but there was very little blood. Like
Right.
very, very little blood. And then you had that one scene or a couple scenes where he's having, the visions and you see like Zendaya's hand covered in blood and you see him like get stabbed and blood falls
it's
out.
way more impactful.
right.
yeah.
And it's like, I'm wondering if he did that on purpose, but that also made the fight scenes a lot of times that they were having, like Momoa and stuff, feel very like PG.
yeah,
it
I
was
picked
like-
up on that too.
It was like a Marvel fight because it's like when a person gets killed and they just go, and they
I
fall,
don't know. I was watching it again, a couple times, obviously, but I like how every move came into. I mean, it's very subtle, but it would lock the opponent's hand out to
Yeah.
where he was right there to slit his throat.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd think it would like spray on him a
I
little
wonder,
bit, or
I
the walls or the
but yeah,
ground.
that's,
It would get on his hands, it would get on his face.
I thought about the blood too, and Duncan has the blood when he gets ran through.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the knife actually goes through him. Maybe the shield stopped the penetration, but like they're breaking a neck or they're
Yeah.
the
right.
slow blade penetrates the shield, so a slow moving target can
Right.
go through.
which is the purpose of that little fly thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I think they weren't using guns because
Yeah.
bullets would
they would
not
have just bounced off.
penetrate.
Yeah. Right.
But
yeah.
I liked it that it was like, I think some people complained, but I like it that it was,
was
a sword battle or actual warring or armies that actually collided. And
Yeah.
there was a shot where one of the Harkonnen ships was actually shot down out of the sky, and it follows that ship and it goes down like it's gonna
Mhm.
hit the ground, but then it actually goes below the shot, and then the shot is of the two warring, the Harkonnens and the Atreides coming together, and right as they come together, the explosion from that ship, goes in between it. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Just
I thought that was really
gorgeous.
cool. The way the camera kind of rotated into that. I think if we talk about this in the realm of Game of Thrones or even Star Wars,
Mhm.
the battles that take place in those films, you feel a distinct like struggle between the two sides. You feel a distinct like, here's what's at stake over here and here's what's at stake over here, and the struggle works itself out in the battle. And I think maybe it was like an action thing, action directing, maybe because they were trying to make the focus more on the story and less on the action elements. That was one of the negatives to me, was that the battles that happen just kind of happen.
Mhm.
And it's like, boom, 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 everybody's dead. Boom, 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 a bunch of stuff blew up. Boom, 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 they get invaded. It was like, I
it was
needed
more
a couple
of a wide shot.
Yeah, I needed a couple moments of just like feeling the stakes of the fight, like feeling the most that we got of that was kind of like the intro fight between Paul and Josh Brolin's character,
Gurney.
Yeah, like that was the most like in a sense stakes that I felt like I was getting, even though I knew like nobody's gonna die here, but it felt like the most emotion went into that. And then obviously again a little bit at the end, but the fights are so abrupt.
Right. I'm thinking of the Gurney scene where he's running towards the army that's coming and he just yells, "On me!" And it's yelled with passion, but it doesn't land. It doesn't
land, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't feel like the desire to save your Duke was there.
It just felt like we're going to fight and we're going to lose, and that is what it is. And
like even, I wanted them to put that armor on that they came to Arrakis with. Like, what are you getting your jacket for? Get that armor.
It just has to do to me with like shot selection, showing the action. Like when Jason Momoa's character Duncan decides, in a sense, he's going to sacrifice himself to save Paul, to save his mom. That scene has a lot of weight, right?
Oh, I thought that was really good.
He shuts the door. Yeah. And he does that.
Blade
and then
to the head.
He gets into a fight with them all, and it's all like boom, boom, boom. He gets stabbed, falls down. And then it's like, nope, he's not dead. And then boom, boom, boom. And then he falls and he's dead. And it's like, I just needed a couple like more emphasis moments of like showing struggles, showing the difficulty on his face, showing, a cut being on his arm, and he like comes back. And it was like the pacing of that. I think it was a pacing thing. I think it was just the way that the fights were paced.
A good example of that's in Lord of the Rings. Is it the second one where the dude's getting shot with all those arrows, but like keeps getting back up to his feet and fighting people and then gets shot again?
Just kidding.
Well, that movie's 20 years old at this point.
No, but exactly.
Yeah,
you're like, oh no. Oh,
so like
no,
to rise up from the dead like you're the Undertaker in a WWE ring. Yeah. It's like...
kind of needed that sound effect when he popped up. I was like, oh, you don't round two. Begin.
Hey, I could only hope that I get 7 different cuts of the freaking film that get re-released and then in box set Blu-ray editions.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, I hope we get an extended cut of this. I'm sure there's a lot more.
Why is Lord of the Rings the only one allowed to have 12-hour cuts? Like, official 12-hour cuts. Like, give that to me.
I'm sure they'll do that for this. Yeah. I hope they do.
I think they will. Mm-hmm. I mean, I got to imagine they put as much production time into this as they could. Maybe it's a budget thing. Maybe because I
think it was pretty much done before COVID.
I know. I'm just saying, like, Lord of the Rings had the benefit of they were shooting all 3 of the films back to back. And so they had to cover as much as they possibly could. They shot tons of extra footage, different options, different ideas. And then they basically were like, well, now we're going to cut it and we see what we don't want to include and what we do want to include. Like, they knew they had the story that they wanted. They just didn't know how much they would include. This one, I don't know. They might have had a very, like, this is your time, this is your budget, this is exactly what you're going to shoot and is in the can. If there's more content there,
then cost effectiveness. I mean, I gotta think like, okay, are we going to use these sets again? Are we going to be, in this area or whatever? Especially in the desert, like you couldn't pick up a couple shots. Like that's crazy.
Just film everything.
You never know.
And then cut it out.
Film everything. Film the bug. Oh wait, they got the bug.
I think they did.
There's a couple shots of a
Jason
random bug
Momoa was talking about 5-hour cuts, but of course that's just the film being put together. It's never an actual. But I'm sure they got a lot.
Yeah, I think to me, it's like what improved it in some areas. What made it an A for me was if they'd cut back on a little bit of the symbolic nature of things with all the flashbacks. They spent a little less time on kind of like the unnecessary shots and like the shot of the mouse didn't do anything for me. The shots of like picking up the bug. I get the idea with the burning palm trees, but like I don't need to know about those. You could have just shown them being watered and the significance of them being there, and then showing them burning later is like it's the same symbolic nature. I didn't need to know that they were like
another thing. I was
the mouse. I think he's named after, but they don't actually do it at the end of the scene. So
right. So like
you'll see it maybe later.
Right. But like spend a little more time showing the other characters' stories, showing the Fremen.
I could have used the Baron is a very evil person. So that when he kills
whenever he's on screen, to me he stole the show. But
but that character itself,
a gift, not a gift.
Yeah,
that's my favorite line.
It just to me it was like really evil and driven, and
he was great.
So in this movie though, like by the time the scientist guy's like, I did everything you wanted, I brought you the Duke. You said I could be with my wife, and he said, yeah, I didn't say she was alive.
He said, set her free. I'll set you free too. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That felt evil, but then like
by the hair,
and cut his throat. But then by the time he gets the poison breath, I don't really care because he wasn't shown to be that evil person. Like in the Lynch film, he's pulling out the heart plugs.
Yeah,
and like they just show you like he doesn't care. Yeah. He's just evil.
No, I mean the pus bubbles that they have to like extract out the pus, like to in terms of cleaning it or something.
So I think you just care more when he dies. Or
I think to me in this film, he was evil because he looked evil and he sounded evil, and he kind of did something underhanded.
Right.
But in the Lynch film, you're like, okay, I've seen him do some really bad stuff. I mean, I agree. They could have probably built that up a little bit more. Maybe they were trying to not make him so like like menacing. He looked very visually imposing and difficult.
They stole that shot from Apocalypse Now with Marlon Brando.
Mm-hmm.
That was brilliant.
Wiping the head.
Oh,
yeah, just a low shadow. Oh, I love it. Like,
I liked his character in it. I mean, the side of his character that I guess the side of their story I didn't actually like too much was Dave Bautista as Beast Harkonnen.
Oh, see, I thought
it wasn't that he was
so underused in it.
Exactly,
so,
like he didn't seem necessary.
Later.
Where was the other nephew? I know that they were both in there because I thought it was Bautista at one point, and I was like, oh, that's a different actor.
Fade Ralph. Yeah, he's not in it.
He's not really in it. Yeah, so
he might be in the second one.
Maybe in the second one, yeah. But like
introduced,
he was so underutilized. But like I could have used.
I thought he was perfect in it, just in that one scene.
Yeah.
In that, like. In that.
Like imagine if we had gotten a scene of like Josh Brolin fighting with like Dave Bautista, right? Yeah. Imagine if we got a scene like that and then you like really see, because that symbolizes literally the struggle between the two houses in that moment. They could have done that. They could have shown that fight. And I know maybe it's not in the book, obviously, but it's like, I'm here to see it. It's a movie. It's a shorter form. I need to see visually, not just read about it.
And who knows if they'll do it in the second one, but like if Bautista is the only nephew, he's going to have to fight Paul.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they might set that
because he's going to have to say like, bring out your champion.
Yeah.
And then he'll say, my nephew is my champion.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they'll actually do that, but that would.
I mean, they set that up definitely with the Fremen battle at the very end. It's like, who's your champion?
Scene, I like him in both films, but man, this was my favorite line in the film was when Duke Leto said, "Here I am, here I remain," and bit down on the thing.
Yeah,
and then but the whole room died out. Like
it showed you the
poison like anthrax. Like boom.
Yeah, because you're thinking it's like, oh, it's just gonna like do a puff of smoke, and it's like, no, that killed them all.
I mean, they literally just all crumpled and died.
That bath he was in was pretty interesting too. I think it looked like olive oil and balsamic vinegar.
Yeah, right.
That's what I was thinking.
Like it wouldn't mix.
Yeah, because it didn't like blend, and it was like a dark and a yellow
way.
Oil.
How do you rise from that and not wipe your eyes?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was cool.
The scene with the poison too, and I know from the Lynch film, like the Baron is wearing like the suit. It's like in his spine
suit because he's so
heavy. And they show him all the time in the Lynch movie floating around, flying around. This one they really didn't show it. And then when the Duke is like paralyzed in the chair and naked, which I thought was a crazy choice, but like it
interesting choice
shows you like the disrespect,
that's humiliation,
and that made you hate the Duke even more,
right?
Yeah,
but then they show him get up from his chair and fly across the table, but it's in the background and it's blurry, and then he's over the dude. What you say, and he bites the poison. They could have just like showed him hitting a button that made him fly up to the ceiling.
They could.
I mean, they do cut back and he's up on the ceiling coughing, but like
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No,
they didn't really show the power.
The surprise is even when those cleaners come in those hazmat suits, they're shocked that he's there. They're like, I think they're shocked in their eyes. To me, was like, if he's alive, I'm gonna have to deal with it, and I know there's poison control. I have to, I don't want to have to deal with him right now. Like I was hoping he was dead or something.
Yeah, that was an eerie shot.
But
too,
and it just pans
blurrily floating across the table
cool.
like that.
They should have showed him like get close to the doctor, that's the spy doctor, and then maybe like float down to him. Yeah, just to be like, this suit makes him float.
Yeah, well, I like that you had better details of like seeing the thing on his back.
Yeah, that was cool.
And that was like apparent that like, okay, that's doing something for him, and then you kind of can add it up that. Right. That's probably
again. I think it's all there. I just don't know how much people are going to pick up on that stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of like I said. If I was going to rewatch it, I would want to pick up some of those little things like that with the music and just to kind of see what's there that I missed and stuff. So it was interesting. Any other? I'm trying to think of any other spoiler talk that we.
Something that I thought was cool when they first introduced the Shai-Hulud, the worms. Yeah, they do it through the binoculars and through the Duke. In the craft watching.
Yeah,
and it's coming after
that's pretty scene for the Lynch version as well.
So it's cool to see an updated version of that.
Patrick Stewart, when they're on the comms, they're like, who what vessel is this? He's like, don't mention the Duke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
What did you guys think of the sandworms? I thought they were pretty epic.
Gorgeous. Especially that scene at the very end where you saw one of the riders. It's like
I like when
things to come, man.
Yeah.
I could have used a shot of the scale when they run to the rocks after their plane crashes.
Yeah.
And he just gets there before the worm, and then the worm peeks out and looks at him.
Yeah.
We could have used like a nice scale shot of just like Paul standing there and being like a centimeter versus the entire screen of the worm.
Yeah.
Right?
You get a little bit of that.
It was just
so dark. Like I don't know if that was maybe the theaters. It was very dark. I mean, it was kind of nighttime at that point. But
yeah, the film. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of scenes that were pretty dark and kind of hard to make things out. They made very effective use of the shadowing.
I liked how this version did a lot better of showing we're here, we're going to be rich, we're going to mine all this. And then they said, well, how much do we have to do? 25 canister or all these canisters every 25 days, and only 2 have been filled.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, okay, they're way behind. Then they show the harvester and the worm's coming to attack, and they're like, get it out of here. And that ship comes.
Yeah.
And the ship has 4 anchors that need to attach to it, and only 3 do, which I think is funny because it's like, well, how many anchors do we need? 4. Let's put 5 on there.
Yeah.
Just in case one fails. You know?
Yeah. I was like, that seems very realistic. Like they're going to make it as cheap as possible, but also like if you're going to lose literally like billions of dollars if one of these things goes down, you're going to have
a safety mechanism.
You're going to have that thing flying nearby, ready to pick it up whenever.
Or always attached.
And you're going to have probably 2 or 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have a safety thing attached that is like a lot easier to like, boop, boop.
Yeah, but except they were sabotaged.
Right.
There were no containers. There were no... They didn't have a lot
of... I know. I'm just... So Ross's point, it's like, you know, you're going to do every single thing you can.
Especially if you're like, they like to wait for the last 30 seconds.
It's not only that. That's the technology that they had that they were using before they even showed up on the planet. They were using the balloon machines to fly in with the little searchers. Like, that was the process they had been doing forever, right?
No,
so to Ross's point, they had they were the richest, most successful house out of all of them. And you're telling me they didn't want to invest in better technology?
A 5th anchor.
Or like literally a device that would come and just carry the canisters.
Right.
You know?
Me too.
Well, I could give you 100 real-world situations where a safety concern was not addressed and people died.
Until after.
100%. Yeah. I would assume that that's happened
like
before.
really recently. I think
or that there's been
cough Boeing 737.
If you've got, well, like it doesn't even, here's the other thing that makes sense. Doesn't make sense to me. It's like, if you have a machine that can pick up the machine that picks up the spice,
just make it one machine.
Just make it one machine. Yeah. Right. Like, just give that thing the balloons and the wings, and then it picks itself up. Like, so doesn't make sense.
So
right?
beyond the funnies, right?
I mean, you gotta have that scene though. Where,
yeah.
I don't remember if that's in the book actually. But it's like you have to have that scene where it's like you show that the good guys are bad guys, and
but so they did a great job of setting
nitpick anything like that, you know,
of setting it up until you get to the Duke, and the Duke just realizes we weren't meant to prosper here. We were brought here to die,
and that was a point.
But I think he knew that. He just had to prove it to Kynes.
I mean, like it's a side point, but like James Cameron talks about, everybody's like with the final scene in Titanic where. Jack's, not able to get on the door, and she lets him go, and everybody's like, there was enough room, and James Cameron is on record saying like, look, if you think there was enough room, I would have just made the door smaller. Like he's gonna die. Like that's gonna have to happen.
Exactly.
So I get that. Like something would have malfunctioned with the machine, so the balloons didn't inflate. But the point is, for such a well-constructed, well-paced, well thought out, like everything has its timing and place for stuff. That just seemed arguably like a less intelligent way of doing something than made sense. I don't know. Maybe the Harkonnens are I
think it
dumb.
was sabotaged. I don't think it was just.
I just think the Harkonnen technology was stupid.
Sabotaged by the Emperor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, and
so they do. I think they do a better job.
That was Harkonnen
in
equipment. They sabotaged it for Duke Leto.
Right.
Yeah.
But Kynes in the film kept on saying like, I'm just a blind observer. I don't know nothing, like I can't report anything to anybody.
Yeah. They did a better job too of showing and telling you that the Baron and I keep forgetting their names, the Harkonnen.
They say
they were taking spice without selling it.
Yeah.
Lynch version. Yeah. And that's how he had all the reserves
and the money for the army.
Yeah. So they were going to start selling their reserves, but not too much,
Yeah.
So the price didn't go too low.
Yeah. Can't overinflate the market.
So that was better in this one too.
Yeah. But yeah, so in the Lynch version, Harkonnen, And this one, Harkonnen.
Harkonnen, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought
the emphasis
They
on the
kind of
syllable.
did like all the, I guess, proper pronunciations of everything, you know?
Yeah, I always thought it was
Like-
Freeman, but I don't know.
It's Freeman.
I know it's Freeman.
I say
but
Freeman,
I always say
But
Freeman.
it's
or I did.
Leto to me, not Leto. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
One of my big pet peeves happened in this movie where there's a main character, Paul, and you're pretty much living through him, and you know all the information he knows, and he has a moment where he needs to say this information to someone.
Yeah.
And he just goes, never mind.
Yeah.
When he finally meets the girl. And I hate when they do that.
Yeah.
It's like, you have so much to say, you know?
No,
Never
I thought he
mind.
saw it.
Never mind.
Never
Yeah.
mind.
No, he's like saying, like, I think we're
Yeah, I think
going to be together, but you don't actually
well, yeah,
say
how
that.
do you say that part? But you can also say, like, I guess it's still creepy to be like, I've seen you in my dreams.
I've seen visions of you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't feel like that's that creepy. I mean, if she's
No, I
saying
thought it played really well.
if
And he
she's
told
so
him
she's
what he
part
was
of a
gonna
very
do.
strong religious order, right? That
Right.
believes that there's this Messiah person. She's saying she believes in that, but she doesn't believe he's the one.
Right.
He could say, I feel like, arguably, I've seen visions of you.
Right.
And she would be like, well, maybe I don't believe you, but that wouldn't be like, oh, that's weird. It'd
Right.
be like, well, that's a
And
potential
he goes
reason
through a
why
good
you're the
transition
Messiah.
too, where he's like, "Why are they all chanting for me or chanting for you?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, what are they saying? Well, they believe you're this Messiah." And he's what's he say? He has a really good line. He's like, "It's all just
What's
prophets or something."
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
remember.
He's pretty
They
much
believe what they were told.
Yeah,
to
they believe that they're told.
Oh,
to believe.
yeah,
because
yeah.
the Bene Gesserit has been on that planet for
They've
100
already
years,
Put
bringing
that story in there, yeah.
But
Yeah.
then he goes all the way through that, to actually believing that he is that Messiah, or he's starting to believe. Maybe,
He's starting to
right?
believe. I mean, I can't
Yeah, the
You'd have
more,
to
the more
assume-
spice he
yeah,
ingests, the more
with
living
the
dreams he
things
has.
that are happening, the
Waking
reality of his
dreams, yeah.
dreams coming true, that there's at least some significance to like the abilities that you're born with, right?
Mhm.
Like if I started seeing visions and the visions started coming true, I would have to go, yeah, I think I'm special.
Right.
I don't know what I am, but I'm definitely special. So
I love that
Yeah.
freak out in the tent with his mom. That one really surprised
Can we
me.
talk about the tent too? I loved that it was the same material as the water suit, whatever they call those
yeah,
things.
yeah, that was
right?
pretty
Which was
cool.
the same as the
Still
mouse
suit.
ear.
Yeah,
right?
Still suits, yeah.
It still suits, yeah.
yeah. I thought that was really effective. I mean, they didn't tell you too much about it. They just basically said
just
like, "Hey, we
show
have the
you.
survival kit."
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And then you go in it and then they show you like little brief snippets of like, here's the water running through the suit
Mm-hmm.
or through the tent. I thought
Mhm.
that was really cool too. I liked all that. I liked the tech. There was nothing about any of the science fiction except for which I know they're from the book. They can't do anything about it, but the
The flapping.
Ornithopters.
ornithopters. Yeah, which I get it.
Badass. I love them.
They looked really cheesy to me. I was
You
like,
did? See, I thought
to
they
me,
were like,
yeah.
I thought they looked so real because I think they
Yeah.
really were. I think they were actual constructed pieces.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they filmed the flying, but
probably CG.
there are certain.
I would imagine computer graphics. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking maybe they just hung it and then did the background, but they looked real. Like I loved all the controls. I loved that nothing was like some
Yeah. There's a lot of practical
overdone
elements, yeah.
hologram. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll just put my hand in the air and
It is crazy
Fly a
what
ship.
was allowed to be technology in the movie, though, because I'm thinking about when he first gets to Dune and he's learning about the worms,
Yeah.
the sandworms, and he's got a 2018 iPhone projector
Yeah. I thought that was
on the bed with him,
Yeah,
and it's like,
well-
why is that allowed to be?
Yeah, they don't talk because they don't talk about how technology is limited
Mhm.
because of the emperor's decree. Basically, that they're limited to only certain kinds of technology, and that's why they have the guy that he asks him about the money that it costs to fly there, and he's like the mathematical dude. Like,
Oh, that's what I was gonna say.
literally-
Before we talk about spoilers, I'm talking about the two women that
Yeah.
just look at each other.
oh, we're past spoilers.
Yeah. So I was talking about that earlier. But then you're right. The accountant guy, you ask him how much did they spend to get here.
Yeah.
Eyes roll up in the head, comes back down, says a number.
right?
They
Which
could
is
have
part
done
of the
something
world.
like that for the women. I'm not saying their
Yeah.
eyes had to roll up in their head, but like some kind of sign that they were engaging in mental telepathy
I agree.
battles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That would have made a lot of sense in the script
I
or
like the
something like
hand
that. Yeah,
signaling too.
that was fun.
cool.
I mean, that was cool. Like little touch. They had the hand signals there. I mean, I was like, man, I need to invent something like that for me and a couple other people. You just
I know
in an
that's
awkward
right.
situation. Let's go home. Like,
Mhm.
No, I'm like within one scene, Dr. Yui was speaking in another language as give Paul more advice, and then Jessica was also motioning another sign language thing. Like it was like 3 different translations going on in one scene.
Yeah.
But the best translation thing was Harkonnen, I guess. Or is that where they're talking to they want to hire the army, and she goes, put it in silence mode, or what'd she say?
Silent or like silence mode or something like that with the cone of silence.
Yeah, exactly. But it was cool, like in the surround sound, where it's like all then you heard was the room.
Yeah. You'd hear a little bit.
And
like,
I love that. Like
right.
that was like I think the only David Lynch homage was the inverted spider thing.
Yeah.
And she goes, tell it to leave. He's like, it doesn't understand you. And then she uses the voice on it and he just starts scrolling away.
Yeah. See, that could have been used more effectively to make, I think, the Baron look probably a little bit more evil.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he had explained like, oh yes, or we like saw the beginnings of him creating that or something like that. Or he's like, yes, this was a child from a planet that, we invaded, that I decided to do some experimentation.
Know what that was.
Exactly. But like they could have done something like that.
Yeah,
that would have
that's a good point.
Instead of like, this is just a creature that exists, that's my pet. It's like they could have turned that into a more menacing side of who the Baron is. But it's not that I felt like he was a bad villain. He's a good villain, but he lacked any like actionable sense of like, he's an evil dude, and his evilness was more in the way he talked, the way he looked, his physical presence kind of on the scene. Because at this point, you're basically like, the Atreides family, the house is more sympathetic. They're nicer. They're good people. You can tell that they're like kind of like the heroes of the story. And you basically just don't like the Harkonnens because they didn't betray, but like they killed a bunch of the Atreides people who didn't really didn't deserve that, I guess you could say. So they're evil for that reason, but they're not like evil, right?
Yeah.
They're just like, they're kind of bad, and they treat the Fremen really bad. They're just willing to like kill the cultures and stuff. And that's evil. I'm making them sound like they're good people, but I'm not trying to do that.
To me, it's like, is Darth Vader more evil when he's sitting in a boardroom discussing how evil they're going to be, or when he's ripping a lightsaber through a terminal and choking dudes out?
You needed to see them doing the evil things, not just talking about the evil things that they were going to do.
Right off the bat, choked a dude to death.
And threw him to the side.
Right.
Yes.
And that's why that scene,
if there was any doubt of the black.
Right. That's why the scene at the end where, he's got Oscar Isaac, the Duke Atreides, naked in the chair and he's just sitting there eating, that was effective.
Right. Agreed.
Because you're seeing how jaded and like whatever he is about this. And that was just so evil. And then he just kills the guy. But like if we'd seen.
And how long was he sitting there? He is eating a meal.
Yeah. Yeah,
because they could have just had him been like, more food, and they could have said something like, that's your 4th meal.
Yeah,
right?
he just kills somebody.
Just that licking of the lips, and literally that slow crawl over the table.
Yeah,
all the way down to Dr. Yui. That dude's still chewing obnoxiously.
Yeah, it was still like really annoying. Yeah, sorry, some people don't like that.
I hate it. That's why I don't go to movie theaters.
Yeah,
that's that sound right there.
I like that sound. Yeah, I like it I like it on pets. Is that weird? Like on dogs, like if you feed them like a treat and they're like, nom, nom, nom. Like that's kind of cute. But when you hear it on people, it's like, oh, yeah. Anyway, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else we didn't.
Well, I want to kind of talk about the Sardaukar warriors.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love that scene where literally, if you watch, that. Kind of like pyramid, all those inverted dead people that the blood flowed down. That's what they used to.
Oh yeah, that was dark.
That
was
mark
evil.
Their heads. I'm like, man.
Yeah, see, that was evil.
Just like,
yeah.
That. Again, you got some more of that.
It was so perfect though.
Type. Religious cadence.
It's like we keep
almost.
saying, it's all there. Mm-hmm. You just have to look at it. Look for it. Right.
Well, it's like you see them all bowing, kind of sitting there, and you're like, okay, this is some sort of like pre-war religious thing.
That legion together.
And then you see the red on his head and you're like, is that blood? That looks like blood. And then it jumps to like, oh, these people. And you're like, oh, that is blood. That's, I thought that was really effectively done.
And that army is like the most powerful, well-trained army ever.
It's supposed to be.
And they actually were.
Yeah.
Like,
unless you're Jason Momoa. And then you're pretty,
they do get
OP.
him at the end. But there was, I love their silence. Like they are literally like stealth people. Like
Especially when they're floating down.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That was eerie, yeah.
But
Yeah,
then you see
it's
the
like-
Freeman come out of the.
That was cool. The reversal, yeah.
Well, I love that a detail is the Fremen saw that speck of a shadow, and then again talk about scale when it pans up. That Sardaukar soldier's like a speck in that
Yeah, you
scene.
can barely see it, but
And I thought it was
like-
I thought it was a mouse at first, and I go, "Oh, that's one of the."
Yeah.
And then from that, they literally
Yeah.
are submerged in the sand, ready
Yeah.
to attack. And then when they come down, it's a completely silent scene.
Yeah.
Like,
one thing that was a minor, like, why type thing, the ornithopter scene where I loved it a lot, the scene with his mom, where he finally uses the voice effectively for the first time.
Sound design was awesome on
The
that.
sound
too.
design was awesome. That was very effective. Was such a cool scene. But the fact that they're flying, they landed, and then they like freeze it because
Mhm.
it's like they're
They realize
suspected of
They
it.
crippled it or whatever.
They
said.
crippled it.
Yeah.
Why didn't they do that to the one that Jason Momoa was in?
Right.
I didn't understand that. I was like, they know he's literally flying around destroying stuff. They're trying to kill him. Why didn't they stop him?
Or the one that the Fremen doctor shows up in,
Yeah.
and rescues Paul and the mom.
right? I'm like, what?
And then they fly again. I was in my mind, I was like, are they going to crash again?
Yeah, I thought that was a cool scene floating around in the
I
storm.
like how
Yeah, that was cool.
That was pretty neat. It was
I
very
like how
that was very Star Wars though. I will say, trust the Force.
Yeah,
Luke.
exactly.
Trust the wind. Just floating around. Yeah,
there was a scene before he got into that, he killed like 3 Harkonnen soldiers, and then he was running to the other ones, and he just like pointed at them, and they started running.
yeah. I think one thing I would have enjoyed if they had made a bigger point of early in the story was the whole like Paul's never killed anybody.
Mhm.
Like if he had gotten in a fight with somebody and
Or when he was training with the Gunny or whatever, Gurney.
yeah, that was more about like you have to be committed to fighting,
He
right?
could have said,
And
like,
be-
you need to be ready to kill.
Right.
You've never killed.
right. So
Right.
it's like when you finally see him and it's like he's never killed anybody. Oh no! I'm like, well, that's never really been an issue
Yeah, exactly.
until now.
Exactly.
So
he
I
hasn't
guess-
needed
but I
to
love-
kill
it's like
anybody.
it's more of like, is he going to kill? It's interesting, but not like, oh my gosh, the stakes are so high.
Right.
No, I love the Stilgar line. Is he toying with him?
Yeah, right. I will
Yeah.
say, so in the Lynch one, when he's having the visions, there's narration happening.
Right.
And shameless plug, but when you read my book, the character can meld into other people's
Okay.
memories,
Yeah.
right? And so you get that narration and the effect of what they're seeing. At the end of this movie, towards the end, Paul is leaning against a rock, watching the fight that
Yeah.
he's having,
Yeah.
and it's very Doctor Strange telling Iron Man, "We fight 1,000,000 times. How many do we win? One."
Yeah.
So he's watching it over and over again. Okay, I win this way.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. You don't get a sense of that in this movie.
Well, I think
to
that
me.
to me, I agree. I very much agree. That scene was setting you up to think he was going to lose because it kept saying you need to die,
Right.
you need to take this.
They're not showing you that he's
the
watching
stab,
himself
right.
fight this guy and like, what if
Well,
I
and he
did
gets
this?
stabbed.
What if I do this?
They don't show you. They don't show him overcoming.
Right.
So the weird thing about that scene is what's happening is correct. What you're saying is that he's seeing the way to win the fight.
Right.
He's seeing the vision. It almost looked like he was seeing a vision of the fight before it took place, and he was going to lose. Not I'm looking through all the different ways that I
Right.
can win this. So it was a very odd thing.
And the
to
only
me.
reason you know that is because the what's the female group called that can see they're making the
Ben Gesserit.
yeah. So the main woman of that says something like he's going to be the bridge between space and time.
Yeah.
Right. So he's
Yeah.
already seeing what's going to happen, what can happen, what
Yeah.
will happen. Right. So
Yeah.
you know that's what he's seeing. He's seeing what can happen in that fight, what's going to happen in that fight, what
Yeah.
will happen in that fight.
Well, I
But
think
you don't
the
get that without the
vision-
narration.
Again,
Yeah.
the vision is to illustrate that Paul Atreides is dying.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Muad'Dib is rising. you
Right.
know, like,
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just they
I don't
showed
think
that
he's
through
seeing
the actual
different
means.
variations of anything though. Like
It would have made more
Doctor
sense
Strange.
if they had shown him dying in a different way, I guess, than he's getting stabbed in the fight. Because
But that's what I mean. That's Paul dying in that vision.
yeah, I get it. I'm
Because
just
they
saying,
do they do say you need to die to be reborn
Yeah.
or whatever.
yeah,
And I thought that was actually dumbing it down because it's actually whispered at that moment, you know.
I totally get it, but it's just again, it if it's happening in that exact fight that he's having, and he's capable of seeing enough to be able to like fight around that to be successful in the battle and in the fight, they should have shown him. I think in that vision, seeing some of the moves and winning, not winning the fight, but maybe winning like a couple. Like he effectively deflects
Right, but I'm
the
saying,
other guy away,
But I'm
right?
saying that's not how the vision is used. It's like a dream, and you have to like decipher
we've
the
seen
dream.
him. We saw him get.
But I get what Ross is saying. He was like looking for a way to win the fight, and I don't think that's. He possessed the skill to kill Janice.
Right.
He had
What confused me earlier was he was having visions of Janice, and I'm like, he kills Janice, so how can he have a future with Janice?
But that's showing you the different
Right,
what will happen, what can
that's
happen.
kinda like
should happen.
No, that was
that's kind of like the difficulty that I had with the visions because
that was his vision with Duncan, Idaho.
They showed him in other visions being killed. They showed other people in the visions getting killed, and that happened. That wasn't because they needed to like rise up. That was literally just in his vision, what's happening is happening, right? That was the first time in a vision where it was like, it's a metaphorical thing in a deeper way that we recognize in the moment. So I get your point, but there's like you can't suddenly start, well, the visions could be this, and the visions could be that, and the visions could be that, without any explanation for what those visions actually are, right?
But the explanation is the very first line of the movie, which is dreams are messages from the deep. It's not saying dreams are facts from the deep; they're messages.
Yeah, right? All I can say is spices a hell of a drug.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other time I missed the narration too is when he puts his hand in the box.
Yeah,
and then the woman's like, "It's only pain in there."
Yeah, that was the only like scene for scene when you're comparing the two that I like the Lynch version because it's Paul Atreides that is reciting the litany against fear.
Yeah,
and not
like
her. Like,
and not the mom whispering it. So I don't know if their minds are melding or whatever's happening.
Maybe, but I just thought, I didn't think.
I like that scene. I thought it was good, but I agree.
Well, I love the scene, but
good.
Yeah,
it's a perfect instance to reminisce on the litany against fear. Like especially when used by Paul, it was just
especially when you bring it back and they're in the plane or the aircraft and it's getting hit by the sandstorm, and he recites kind of that same thing.
He does, and that's the moment where he has to learn to overcome his fear and everything like that. So but
Kyle MacLachlan, the pain. I mean, because Lynch has visuals over the burning of the hand and stuff, and it's interlaced. I mean, they kind of do the same thing, you know.
Yeah. Overall,
but it just works with that monologue of the litany against fear. I love it.
I also love that he says, "Mother, you're pregnant," right? And then they never say anything again because they're not like. It's not like a Saw movie where it's like, well, don't worry, we'll recap this at the end. You know,
she's in the desert as they're walking and she holds her stomach.
Right. But they don't just flat out like when Javier's character is like, we need to fight then to see who has the power. And the mother steps forward. It's not like the son, Paul, comes out and goes, she's pregnant. Don't hit her.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what modern movies would do.
They would. Yeah.
So it's just nice.
There's no hand holding in this film at all. I think we can pretty much all agree to that.
That's why I enjoy multiple watches, and I enjoy a film that it makes me want to watch it again, you know?
Yeah. I'm going to probably try and watch again for that reason at some point.
And I'd almost try Blade Runner again.
Yeah.
But I think that's it's my favorite film of all time.
I'm excited for a couple things. I'm excited because I know the mother's pregnant, right? I know what becomes of that. And I want to see how they do it this time. But I'm also nervous how they're going to age him up.
I hope
because time passes.
Yeah.
But there was a shot after the jihad was taking place that he's on that ship and they're dressed all in black. He looks pretty badass.
Right. And then he trains the Fremen in the voice techniques. And I'm kind of excited to hear how that's going to sound with the sound production and
I'd be very frustrated if they did
sound
part two of this.
The sound modules are like a David Lynch thing. I don't think that's actually in the book, so I don't think.
Oh, you don't think they'll even?
No, but I love the Shawnee.
Yeah,
right.
We'll see how deep they get into it.
But I love that sound stuff in the Lynch one.
Right.
It's doing well financially. It's probably going to make its money back.
Including advertising.
I don't know if it's including advertising.
I think it already made its money back in Europe. Because I'm hearing 130
production
or
budget was 165. I think it's up to. I haven't checked it recently. Here, let me look.
Do you have weekend box office too? I'd be curious.
Yeah, so worldwide it's done 220. So if you do 165 and then add marketing budget, which is usually double, it needs to return back close to 300 million to be pretty successful.
And this is opening weekend.
It's opening weekend, so it'll probably make it there, I think. But is it going to be like
and HBO numbers do matter.
Yeah, but is it going to be like a huge, financial boon for them? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be unless it really does well with other
when
stuff.
You're releasing the film on HBO at the same time.
Yeah,
it's
but
impossible.
My point is, are they going to be able to make enough financial return from this to want to invest in a part 2, which in all intents and purposes, they're going to question like, well, if this one didn't do that well, can we really expect the second one to do that well?
Whoever allowed this film to get made knew what they were getting. That's what I think.
I think it's a combination of factors. I think, yes, but I also think...
I do think it's a
if
movie.
I'm a studio head and I'm looking at this and I'm like, we returned maybe 20, 30, 40 million on this, which is a decent return. But the second film probably will be less... maybe it'll be more popular.
More expensive, though.
But it'll probably be more expensive.
Not when you have all your sets and all
There's
your...
a
you
lot
need to
of
pay
factors.
actors more to come back.
Yeah, you got to... Well,
not when you killed half of them.
That's true.
But they're going to have new actors maybe that come in. And I don't know. I'm not saying they're not going to make it.
The only new character I see is Fade.
Right.
I think... Do you have the? There's a
maybe
lot of
wrong,
factors
but-
that are at play with this, and all I'm saying
Princess
is that
Irola and maybe the Emperor.
if you look at the budget and you look at the return that they're making from this film, it's not insane.
And the time spent.
Right, the time spent, the effort that's put in this, which I don't think they care about because they'll give it to Denis Villeneuve.
But I'm saying what I'm hearing is there's going to be a part 2.
I won't believe that until the
No,
I wouldn't believe that until the papers are signed.
No,
because I don't.
It's so different than if it was pre-pandemic, and we didn't have, any delay. Like if this movie came out in 2020 when it was supposed.
I feel like if you're...
Was it 2019 or 2020?
Yeah,
it was supposed to come out.
If your plan is,
it was.
We're going to make this movie, and it's going to take 2 movies to do it, and we're going to end it right here, which is a pretty big cliffhanger. Why are you not filming the entire thing at once?
I think it's budget. I think they didn't want to put that much budget into it. That's got to be it, right? There's no reason not to do both.
That's what blows me away. Is this is not a big budget.
It's not a big budget. I mean, it's
big, but I mean, to me, it looks amazing.
What I would say is it's pretty big for a sci-fi film these days. I mean, most films of this magnitude are, a slightly lower caliber Marvel film or something. But I mean, I don't know. I think if they can return, I'll wait and see. Maybe they think it's worth the investment into the second film.
Yeah, I think
or something like that.
Or maybe they look at the numbers that Lynch's film still gets, and maybe they're just like,
they look at,
if we can just
they
get
look at a
20
Blade
years.
Runner, 1980 Blade Runner flopped, and it is hailed as the definitive science fiction movie ever made.
Yeah, and they didn't make a sequel to it until
right.
30, 40, 50 years later because and they kept re-releasing the original one with different versions to try and get new traction and everything like that. So I'm not saying they're not going to make it. I would just say,
I think
based upon where it's at right now, I say it's 50-50 in my mind whether or not they'll make it.
At the same time, I think they will because everything's content starved, So if you already have something in production, I know they have the script written. I know they have concept art. I know a lot of it's already done.
Yeah.
I think they'll go ahead. I
Hopefully so. Yeah.
But I hope numbers look good. What'd you say the weekend for US was?
Well, overall it's been 40 million in domestic. Worldwide it's been 180, so we're at 220
40 million for the weekend though? That's really good, I think.
Yeah. It is. Well, maybe they're going to wait and see what happens in the following weeks. You know what I mean? They probably have a dollar amount threshold in mind, which I don't know what it is, but it's like, it's got to return 300, 400 million, and then we'll be green light for a second one. But it would really stink if they didn't do a second one because they left it in such like a cliffhanger spot. It's kind of like, what?
I mean, I guess people that like it and are like, why didn't they ever make a second one? We can say, well, go watch the Lynch thing and you'll get the rest of the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
or read the book.
Or read the book. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that they could make from the Dune universe. Like if they were to try and set this up as there's prequel books, there's sequel books, there's midquel books, there's Children of Dune, there's Messiah, there's like all this content that they could harvest. But if there's not an audience that they think is out there, then they're not going to do it, So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they'll do like I could also see him doing like it's on HBO. They could do a limited run, prequel series on HBO or something like that.
As good as Foundation looks, I'm like, do it that way. I don't care.
Yeah.
I actually prefer the 10-hour content of a TV show versus the 2-hour.
Well, I thought about it. I'm like, they could have legitimately done a 4-part series.
Make it 4 hours
for
long.
HBO and just make each one like an hour long, hour and a half long, or an hour and 15 minutes.
Like I said, like why?
They could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of having a runtime when you know it's going to go on HBO Max or something? Have a theatrical.
Yeah.
But then, like, to me, you're it's like the Justice League. You're making money off the same stupid thing. Like, cut it for a theatrical release.
Yeah.
Because everybody's crying about run times, like they got to be somewhere, and then have
mostly the bathroom.
6 months later.
I think it's more just this is a really long film and I'm bored, but I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying, well, you can walk out.
Yeah.
Whatever. Go take your vape break, but look,
I'm gonna leave the film 3/4 of the way through because it's too long.
But I'm saying, no, I'm saying, and then 6 months later, give me that 4 or 5 hour director cut, and then I'll be excited about your streaming service instead of taking away from the film.
Yeah.
And then give me something slightly more when it's released. I just don't feel like they're playing it that way. Like,
also in a world where I know most actors
running time, give me 2 hours of the film in theater and then the rest on your stupid streaming platform.
I'll go home and sign up for it.
Yeah.
Most actors and stuff aren't saying like, I'm only signing up for an hour and 58-minute movie. If it's an hour 59 or more, you have to pay me more. Yeah. So like, if you can do that, like, why not do the 4-part TV series? All the actors are there. All the stories there. Make it all at once. Yeah. Release it 1 hour at a time.
I'm surprised they didn't try and do the whole entire thing at once. I mean, it would have made more sense, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm not the studio head. I'm not the person that's putting this whole thing together.
You have my vote.
But again, I
don't know if I want that role. Jeez,
I really recommend your first experience being in a Dolby Cinema to watch it. It's a great one to watch on your television.
Yeah, it's a great one to watch in theaters. I would agree. Mm-hmm. I mean, I enjoyed it. We were pretty far back. We were in the very back row, and which was nice because you can see more of the picture. But they definitely don't mix it for the back row of the theater. So I would have liked to have been a little closer, personally.
And if you're interested, well, I'm going to go see it again for sure.
Yeah. If you're interested,
for the
contact Dave. You can go see it with him.
But if you're interested in the David Lynch, I recommend watching all versions.
Yeah.
Because there's extended cuts.
There's like 6, right? Something like that.
I don't know, but they're fan edit ones, and like there's a fan edit that almost gets it right, but he cuts out this Jessica and Duke Leto scene, where they actually
where you're watching Lynch watch the movie. You don't actually see the movie.
I would actually watch it.
Well, no, that's Lost Highways, but there's a scene with them that is like beautiful, and it actually talks about the consummation of Alia, her future, daughter, and it's an amazing scene. But this extended fan edit, whatever, perfect, cuts that scene out. I was like, what?
Yeah, anyway. You'll make your own cut there, Dave.
You should make the fan edit.
There, yeah.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying, don't edit for content. I want all the deleted scenes. Every scene in one cut, and I guess I'm gonna have
just
to
give us
like
the Snyder cut.
I'm gonna have to do it myself.
I want every shot that was rolled. I want 6 different versions of the same scene.
You're gonna get like the action click.
I want to see the sticks clicking and calling roll.
No, but you're trying to find this definitive one that has a lot of
I'm just
cut footage.
I'm just joking. Yeah.
But I mean, like, why isn't there one just with it all? Like,
I hope they announce they're going to make the sequel, which they need to do,
and then we get too much.
Then we get an extended cut of this.
Yeah, but I love Lord of the Rings. They're like my favorite films. I've watched all the extended versions, and even me, I'm like, okay, I love that shot. I love that it's in there, but I get why they cut it.
But they had my other favorite line is, "I should have married you." To Jessica in bed.
That was nice. Yeah.
I thought we'd have.
There's a longer
have
scene
more
in
time.
the Lynch version.
Yeah.
Which is, again, in that scene. I love it.
I think their relationship was something that I would have liked to see more of. That was another thing. I was like,
Yeah, but I thought
it's so brief. It's like,
but in the very little
and
time
go.
that they had, I thought they showed a lot more of the dynamics to it.
And he even says, I thought we'd have more time.
Yeah, I love that scene where he's like,
Yeah.
Will you protect Paul? And she goes, with my life. He goes,
not as
I'm
mother.
talking about
shows that he knew.
Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
It shows that he knew what was happening.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't handhold you there, but like he knew what he was signing up for when he put his seal on the paper and said, like, we're going to do this. Like, and there's a depth there that I like. That's the depth of filmmaking that you hope to see.
Yeah, it's Dr. Yui.
Right. And it's show, don't tell.
Everything. Yeah.
But it's also can be too bad. And I think it did both in this film. It did a great job with the non-handholding, but then in other ways, I think we needed a little bit more handholding.
Right.
But
well, what they did was like, you need an IQ of at least 90 to watch this film. Unfortunately, the average IQ is 70.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. Yeah. You have to like take a test before you go to watch the movie. It's like, we're not going to let you buy a ticket. You're just not smart enough.
Right.
So yeah, that'd be bad.
Yeah. So,
But I like smart movies. I like movies made. That sounds dirty. I like movies made for adults.
Yeah.
You're right.
Careful.
so no program is its biggest flaw, I guess.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Cool. Well, we can go ahead and wrap things up.
All right, then.
Some ways for you guys to get people connected to you again. We're talking about here, Dave.
TheVasic.com. And then it will have links to everything else like Instagram. It's like at the Vasic, at the _ Vasic, VASIC. But yeah.
Sounds good.
Ross Caligari, dreamingintheshadows.com. It's got all my socials and emails and all that stuff on there.
Absolutely. And as always, check out our website, reelreviewmedia.com. We also have Facebook /reelreviewmedia or Real Review, The Real Review. We're posting content up there, mostly just the episodes at this point, and love to get connected. So check out our website. Shoot us a line. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the film or anything we talked about, reelreviewmedia@gmail.com. I'm Joel, and
I'm Ross. It's been great.
And Dave here.
Dave.
And I'm going on Monday if anybody wants to go.
All right. It's been real.